There's a question you've been asking, maybe not out loud, but quietly in your own thoughts, when everything slows down. Why does your life feel like this when you're actually trying? You're not careless. You're not living recklessly. You're trying to grow, trying to heal, trying to get it right. And still, things feel harder than they should. Relationships don't hold. Peace doesn't stay. Clarity feels just out of reach. And if you're honest, there have been moments where you've wondered if God has somehow overlooked you. But what if that's not what's happening at all? What if the tension you're feeling is not neglect, but preparation? What if God is not ignoring you, but confronting the parts of your life that cannot come with you into what He has for you? Because when God prepares a woman, He does not just bless her, He realigns her. And realignment feels like loss before it feels like clarity. So if everything feels like it's shifting, not settling, you may not be forgotten. You may be in the middle of being prepared. The first sign is that God is not letting certain things work anymore. You tried. You gave it time. You prayed about it. You stayed longer than you should have because you thought effort would make it right. And still, it didn't hold. That confusion you feel, that almost feeling, is where most women start questioning themselves. But this is where you need to understand something deeper about how God works. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." This was written by Solomon, a man who had the wisdom to see how often human understanding is shaped by emotion and attachment rather than truth. The word trust in the Hebrew is batach, which means to place your full weight on something, to rely on it completely. And the phrase, lean not, comes from a word that means to support yourself against something as if it can hold you up. God is not just asking you to believe in Him. He is asking you to stop using your own perspective as the thing that holds your life together. Because your understanding will always try to justify what your heart is attached to. So when something keeps collapsing in your hands, it is not always because you failed. Sometimes it is because God refuses to let you build your future on something that cannot support your calling. What you call things not working is often God removing what would have broken you later. The second sign is that you feel disconnected from people you used to feel close to. There's no big fight, no clear ending, just a shift. Conversations feel different, energy feels off. You leave feeling drained instead of filled, and you start wondering if something is wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. Something is being revealed. Amos 3:3 says, "Can two walk together unless they are agreed?" This was spoken in a time where agreement meant shared direction, shared purpose, shared alignment. The word agreed carries the idea of being appointed together, moving in the same direction intentionally. This is not about liking someone. It's about alignment with where your life is going. You can love someone deeply and still not be aligned with them anymore. And when God is preparing you, He will begin to disrupt connections that are pulling you in a direction He is calling you out of. That distance you feel is not rejection. It is protection over your direction. Because God will not let you stay deeply rooted in relationships that quietly keep you from becoming who He is calling you to be. The third sign is that you can't enjoy what you used to anymore. You tried to go back to the same habits, the same environments, the same version of yourself. But it doesn't sit right. It feels empty faster. You feel convicted quicker. You can't stay there comfortably. And that in-between feeling is frustrating because you don't fully fit in your old life, but you're not fully walking in the new one yet either. But that tension is not confusion. It's transformation. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Paul wrote this to believers who were trying to live differently in a culture that pulled them back into old patterns. The word transformed in the Greek is metamorpho, the same root used to describe a complete change of form, like something becoming entirely different from the inside out. This is not behavior modification. This is identity change. And the word renewing means a renovation, a complete replacement of how you think. God is not trying to make your old life better. He is replacing the way you see, the way you think, and the way you choose. That's why what used to satisfy you now feels empty. You're not losing yourself. You're outgrowing what no longer matches who you're becoming. The fourth sign is that your pain has started, exposing patterns you can't ignore anymore. At first, it just felt like another disappointment. another relationship that didn't work, another situation that left you confused. But then you started noticing the pattern, the same type of connection, the same emotional outcome, the same cycle repeating. And now the question has shifted from, why does this keep happening to me? To, why do I keep ending up here? This is where God moves deeper than comfort. Romans 8:28 says, God works all things together for good for those who love him. Paul wrote this to believers who were suffering, trying to understand how pain could exist alongside God's goodness. The word works together is synergio, where we get the word synergy. It means to actively cooperate, to take separate things and make them produce a combined result. That means God does not waste anything, not even the choices you regret, not even the patterns you're ashamed of. He uses them to reveal what needs to be healed. Sometimes the good is not the outcome you wanted. It's the exposure you needed, because you cannot walk into a different life with the same unhealed patterns operating underneath everything. The fifth sign is that you feel a pull toward God, but also resistance at the same time. You think about him more. You feel conviction more quickly. You know certain areas of your life are not aligned, but you hesitate. You delay. You tell yourself you'll fully surrender later, and you stay in that tension, close enough to feel him, not surrendered enough to experience him fully. Jeremiah 29:13 says, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." This was written to people in exile, people who were far from where they thought they should be, trying to understand how to find God again. The phrase, "with all your heart," in Hebrew is labab, meaning the inner person, your will, your desires, your decisions. Not just emotion, everything. God is not hiding from you, but he is not found halfway. Partial surrender will always produce partial peace. That tension you feel is not confusion. It is the gap between knowing what God is asking for and not fully giving it yet. The sixth sign is that you are tired in a way rest doesn't fix. You can sleep. You can take breaks. You can distract yourself and still feel exhausted. Not physically, but internally. That kind of tiredness is not just stress. It is misalignment. Matthew 11:28 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Jesus said this to people who were overwhelmed by expectations, responsibilities, and trying to hold their lives together. The word weary means to be worn down from labor, and burdened means to be loaded with something heavy. But the word rest here is not just sleep. It means to refresh, to restore, to give relief at a soul level. This is not about doing less. It is about coming back to the one who was meant to carry what you've been trying to carry alone. You're not just tired. You're carrying a version of your life that was never meant to be sustained without God. The seventh sign is that you are in a season where nothing feels clear, but everything is changing. You don't have all the answers. You don't know exactly where your life is going. You just know it can't stay the same. And waiting feels uncomfortable because you want clarity. But what God is doing in this season cannot be rushed. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." The word time here refers to an appointed season, a specific moment determined by God. This was written by Solomon as he reflected on how human beings struggle with timing because we see moments, but God sees the full timeline. Preparation always happens in seasons that feel slow because what God is building in you has to be strong enough to hold what he's bringing to you. You're not behind, you're being built. So if you see yourself in this, you need to understand this clearly. God has not forgotten you. But he is also not going to bless a version of your life that is out of alignment with him. That is why this feels the way it does. This is not punishment. This is process. The life you want is not on the other side of trying harder. It is on the other side of surrender. And that surrender is not about losing yourself. It is about finally becoming who you were created to be. If this is hitting you, don't just move past it. Sit with it. And then open your Bible. Start with the verses we just walked through. Read them slowly. Ask God to show you what you've been holding on to that he's asking you to release. Because he's not distant. He's inviting you closer. And this time, don't ignore it.